We are on video number 5. If you missed first 4 videos, you shouldn't be bloody watching this.
Yes,
Because
for
it's not going to
sure.
make much sense, is it? Well, it will still deliver value, but first 4 are essential to actually get to this point. And
Yes, to fully understand why we're doing things, right? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to talk about nutrition a bit more in details. We did one video on nutrition, kind of touching up on basics, and today we're going to delve more into, hey, why are you looking into these things instead of focusing on these things, instead of focusing on just calories and whatnot? Your health is going to improve. You give it on whatever the hell your outcome is. Eating a bit less than you're eating now probably is going to be a bit better than not. But let me rephrase that as well, that if you are just starving yourself all the time, you probably need to get your health checked, which we talked about in video number 1. Get everything checked first, and then come into video 2, video 3, video 4, and this is where video 5 comes into place. So let's say you've got everything lined up, everything is really nice and rolling in for your life. What's next now? Like, hey, why can't I just have protein shakes, carb drinks, and hell of a lot of supplements, and my life is cheap and cheerful, which doesn't usually work out like that.
Yeah, and I mean, the main thing is going to be the those things, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, they all need cofactors inside your cells, inside your biological being to do the things that they actually do. Like just because you have
So for me, I
glucose,
just finished training like
right?
half an hour ago. So I need
Yeah,
to finish this, and this is kind of good time for me to do that.
right, right. But say you were micronutriently deficient. For example, let's say you didn't have um, things like B vitamins, right? You're not going to be able to convert a lot of that food, in particular things like niacin, B3, or B6 and B7, where those are cofactor vitamins that help your body convert food into energy. I mean, that's why you're taking it in. It's not because there's something magical about protein in that form, right? You could drink, and that's the other thing. You can drink that same drink later this evening or earlier today before you did any of this training, and it's going to act differently in the body because you're putting it in a different environment. And not having certain vitamins or minerals is a different environment, right? So you want to make sure that you aren't deficient in things like your vitamins and minerals, because those are, think of it like weak points in the chain or bottlenecks to make everything go smoothly. Just from a nutritional perspective, last time we talked about calories, right? And just kind of generally what we're wanting to accomplish with those and that. This will change how some of those calories are utilized. So the same 2,500 calories that you might consume and be slightly vitamin deficient in or mineral deficient in something is going to act differently than the same 2,500 calories at a different point in your life. That could be soon. It could be 3 months later. You're still eating 2,500 calories, but now something is different is happening. Maybe you're not vitamin deficient anymore. Of
And not even that. It's if you haven't done what we talked about in the first few videos, if your physiology is not geared up, you can be same exact body weight, same exact body fat, and so on and so forth. But if your physiology is not complementing what you're doing, those calories will, like, not, let's say not even the calories, is that food interaction with your body will be completely different.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So and that's the thing is vitamins and minerals are also, it's not like, oh, because most people would be like, well, then you should start with nutrition first. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work that way because vitamins and minerals also get input by your body. See, that's the difference is they're not this static thing that you put it in your body and it just waits to do the thing that it does. No, it actually is in your body, and then your body decides, oh, we are actually in this biological process as we've set up ourselves this way, so this is what we do with the vitamins. Whereas if you put even really nutritionally dense food into somebody who just sits all day, it's going to act differently because the inputs go both ways. Okay. Your body communicates both ways, not just I gave it something, now it needs to do something. It actually is the other way too. I gave it something and my body can or cannot do the thing that I think it's going to do. It will do different things. So it communicates two ways. So yes, watching the first videos set you up to be biologically working and setting up your biology to do the things that we want. And then finally we start introducing, hey, this is what I want you to do with calories, and this is what I want you to do with the foods that you're eating. I want you to biased, getting plenty of vegetables in. And this is probably the hardest. I'll just tell you that. People getting in enough vegetables is probably the very hardest thing that I have to deal with as a coach.
And it's probably up to par with drinking enough water.
Yeah, which is covered in some of the first videos, which is, hey, if you're not drinking enough water, that's kind of like the constituent of everything that goes on in your body, right? So if you're not drinking enough water, you're literally, I like to think of it like a battery, your body being a battery, like on a car, right? If it doesn't have the fluids, the battery doesn't have enough, it doesn't work correctly anymore.
Exactly.
If the battery goes dry, it's dead, right? And the battery honestly really isn't that dissimilar to the human body. All it's doing is taking a chemical reaction and turning it into DC energy. That's literally what we do in our cells, in our mitochondria. We're taking water, sunlight, and oxygen, and the combination of food, making a chemical process, and we're making electrical signals. That's how I'm moving my fingers, that's how I'm seeing you, etc. We are literally a DC battery, and if we don't maintain a good fluid level inside the cell, it's just like you're dehydrating a battery in your car, and it's not going to work very well.
And it's something that people kind of oftentimes miss out, is that they are majoring in minor things. Hey, what supplement should I be taking? What food time should be for this supplement? And what kind of training plan should I follow? This and that. Like, none of that matters if you haven't set a baseline where you're physically at close to optimal level as it's physically possible. Which, let's be honest, not a single person can achieve.
Right. Yeah.
You can try to eliminate, like we talked about last week, the dumb tax you pay by not doing things that make you worse. That should be your top one priority, and only then you focus on what can make me better. What can make me better?
Yes. What can you integrate that just becomes fail safe, where it's like, hey, no matter what, I'm going to get this. One of the things and then on that note, one of the things is nutrition. Those are one of the things. And notice I didn't say calorie intake, macro counting, none of that. What I mean is focusing on the foods that you regularly intake being high quality foods, in the sense of they're going to be vegetables, they're going to be fruits, so that you can cover a lot of broad bases of minerals and vitamins. And then on the protein side of things, you're going to focus on whole food proteins. You're and not being afraid of eggs, not being afraid of red meat. Again, I'm not saying you have to make your diet a carnivore diet. Just don't exclude those, just like we don't exclude veggies.
Aware, I would say, is that you need to be aware that human body is extremely weak. We are extremely weak. We are not animals. We are not cow who can graze all day. Like gorillas eat 80% of their life. And people keep saying, yeah, but look at how big and powerful they are. If I was eating 80% of my lifetime, I would be probably same. And I'm not even being funny. Gorillas are not eating just grass. They're eating all the insects and everything that's on those leaves and whatnot. They're probably taking a hell of a lot of protein in them.
Oh yeah, and their digestive tract is set up to extract more protein than ours from vegetable matter to begin with. So yes, their protein intake is actually quite high, quite high. It's just in a different format. See, everything has some protein. It's just whether your digestive tract is set up to fully extract it or not. Unfortunately, ours isn't that great for extracting protein completely from vegetable matter. It's just not that much. That doesn't mean focusing on a vegan diet isn't good. And you just have to be, you're making it unnecessarily hard. So go back to the video before this. You're creating a tax that's unnecessary. when you
Absolutely. So
when
you're
you
not
over.
limiting your ability to kind of avoid things that possibly are making you worse whilst you're thinking it's the next best thing, really.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
it's more of a preference rather than a health.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not saying, at the end of the day, this is a preference. People changing their body is a preference, right? So I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying, hey, if you are thinking that vegan diets or vegetarian diets are superior for some reason, you're probably a little bit delusional. You're being led astray a little bit. Now, if you are fully committed to that lifestyle because of your personal thinking, you're probably going to be able to do okay, but you need to make sure that you're covering other bases. Like you
Yeah,
got to be
you
more
need
in depth.
professional help because figuring out all like stacking all the amino acids and micronutrients and all that from just plant-based diets is extremely hard. Like
Mhm. Yeah.
I am fully qualified nutritionist. I wouldn't touch that side. I'm like, dude, it will take me a full week just to figure out what you need to eat for a day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's not
And
fun.
then you won't be able to vary it that much because you by default have to now, put the
Yeah,
puzzle pieces together. Hey, you need this much of these proteins from this vegetable source or plant source, and then you need these proteins from this other vegetable source or plant source in order to even make a complete amino acid profile. So that's a
yeah,
different subject. What we're
it's
talking about
doable,
today.
but
Yeah.
like we said before, if it's not necessary, there are much better ways,
Yes. Yes.
easier ways, let's say.
Yes. Much easier. And so one of them, the thing that repetitively comes up, and people know this, is spinach. If you can get enough spinach in a day, you're going to cover, I would say, easily 70% of your nutrients from vitamins and minerals coming from plant sources. Spinach is going to
So
be
what would be your best approach in getting the spinach in? Would it be cooking, steaming, blending?
so I for men, right? Men that are around the 90 kilo range, something like that. Um,
Let's say 200 pounds.
Yep, 200 pounds. Yep. Then I would say you're going to run into a difficulty getting spinach fresh, like enough spinach. It's just not going to really. You'll be able to eat one salad, but you're not going to be able to eat three salads every single day, right? So my default is it needs to be cooked in some way, and you can either cook it yourself, or you can save some time and buy it already frozen. So all you have to do is steam it. Okay. And then you can also buy it canned. I personally like the frozen or canned. I like canned if you're um, like in a hurry because there's literally zero prep time. You open it up, you dump it out, drain it. You can even heat it back up, saute it, whatever, and season it at that point to go with your meal. It's very versatile. Um, and most people the BPA in the cans, that's kind of started to go away. People food manufacturers don't really use BPA in their cans anymore and stuff like that. So the canned is actually just like the frozen, is taken right from the farm and either frozen or cooked and canned immediately at peak freshness, so you are getting very, very fresh produce if it's
Absolutely.
frozen.
And this is something that people don't realize that fresh veg oftentimes are not as good as frozen or like canned stuff because they're not fresh anymore by the time you pick them up.
Right, and then you take them home and you forget about them for 3 days and then they go bad, right? That happens all the time, especially if you're just starting this and you're like struggling to get enough vegetables in. Happens all the time. The very first step that I would say, if you're somebody that's getting into this and you're trying to get enough vegetables in, don't go out and buy a crap ton of fresh vegetables. The ones that you like, right? So the ones that I like that I do keep fresh are bell peppers. Okay, I love bell peppers. I do keep them fresh. You can buy canned bell peppers, but I like them better fresh. But those get used. Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
they're quite
I'll
sweet
eat
as well, easy to make. Like
easy to make. You can even eat them raw, right? And they still taste good. Things like that. But the things that go bad for me are almost always spinach when I was buying it fresh a lot, right? So that's why I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go to frozen. And then frozen was kind of a little bit more of a hassle just to keep in a freezer all the time, especially because I was buying it by the large thing. And then that's when I went to canned and frozen. So that works really good. Another thing is, so You're also going to want to vary your vegetables a little bit, and you just do it by color. That's why I like bell peppers, spinach, and carrots and sweet potatoes. Those are really going to meet a lot. I mean, a lot of the basics of micronutrients that you're wanting to get in. A little bit of carrots, a little bit of spinach, sweet potato, and then obviously you're going to go out to eat, or you're going to go over there. And what you do is exactly what I suggest everybody do: start with the vegetables. If you go to a place, look at what you're going to have for the vegetables, make sure that you're going to get that in, and then you add to that. Mine's actually kind of the opposite of where most people start. Most people start with, what's my protein source going to be, right? And I'm like, you can get the protein source from anywhere. I mean, you can go anywhere and order some chicken. Just, that's all there is to it. Just give me some chicken. Okay, you've covered your protein, a high quality protein right there. But vegetables, you especially if you don't like them, those are the things that you got to prioritize, so that you are like, oh, that actually sounds really good. I kind of want to eat that. Well, that's good. That's already kind of reprogramming your brain, right? That's what this whole thing about is changing, is reprogramming what you put in your mouth. And it starts with finding vegetables that you like and starting to consume them regularly. Daily, is ideal.
And there's one big part that people miss as well, because they will just say, hey, why don't I just buy multivitamin and micronutrients and whatnot? Fiber in those foods will help you to keep your digestive system healthy.
Yeah, it'll help you in multiple ways, not just in like the mechanics of digestion and going
Yeah,
through your bowels, but also that fiber, soluble fiber and insoluble fiber, are things that keep your microbiome healthy, right?
absolutely.
If you don't have your microbiome healthy, you have shit digestion. You actually literally can feel, I can anyway, when I go off and I don't eat very good for a week or so, I'm like, oh man, my guts are torn up, and I really haven't ate that
And
much.
and that's when your appetite goes through shit
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
pretty
you
much.
can't even eat. Like, I'm like, man, I'll eat maybe 2 meals today, because I just my body's telling me, my digestive
Yeah.
system is telling me that it's a no-go. Whatever you
And
ate
it's
for the
and it's
last week,
something I find a lot of people miss out. They're like, oh, if I eat this, I feel really full. I'm like, you feel full because your body has not used to digesting it yet. Like
yeah,
if I eat like greens all the time, like by day 7, 10, I'm just ravenous.
yeah, same here. Yeah, and that's another thing. Once you get used to digesting all these foods, these high nutrient foods, you'll digest through them really, really quick, and you actually feel more energized, which means you're going to
Absolutely.
expend more energy. You expend more energy. Guess what happens? You're way more hungry,
Mhm.
and most people might interpret these things as bad. Hey, I'm getting more hungry, etc. And I'm like, yeah, but look at your body composition. Look what's happening over the last three
Yeah.
weeks. You're actually getting a little bit leaner. Yeah, the scale weight hasn't changed. That's good. You're hungrier. You're slightly leaner, and the body weight, the scale hasn't changed. I'm like,
More
that
mentally
means,
aware.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, you're crushing your workouts. None of this is bad. None of it is bad. The only thing that's bad is your psychological confusion with the scale not going down. I'm like,
Mhm.
forget about the scale. Look at your pictures, look at how you feel, look at what you're doing with your food, and things are changing. And then people start to really grasp that, as far as like, especially when they start getting like a six pack, or like the thing that I do is, let's measure your waist and your thighs, right?
Yeah.
Along with the scale. 9 times out of 10, the scale's not moving, the waist is coming down, the thighs are coming down. I'm like, your pants are fitting you better. I'm like, don't worry about the scale. The things are happening the way we want them to happen, because this isn't a weight loss program. This is a change your body the way it looks, right? That's what we want
Absolutely.
to change.
And the
We're
goal should be always feeling better, always
exactly.
looking better. You
Yeah.
looks will
You're
come when you start feeling better.
and that's 100% right. Like when you feel awesome, you're like, oh man, I feel awesome. I look really good. It just is kind of a self-fulfilling positive feedback loop,
Mhm.
mentally and emotionally. Um, and so yeah, another thing so we talked a little bit about like the go-to vegetables. Like if you're just getting into it, spinach is going to be your go-to. Um, bell peppers are going to be excellent, and really any colored vegetable, right? Carrots, I mentioned carrots, sweet potatoes, um, And some people, like radishes. Radishes are excellent. Some people like beets. Those are excellent. Anything that has some color to add to your greens. And then as far as like expanding your greens selection, you can go. I would never really go too far away from spinach because it's so easy to implement. You can get it literally everywhere on the planet. And then the next one is going to be some kale. It's going to be some higher end salads. Like romaine salad is probably the worst as far as like nutrition. There really isn't much there. But, there's nothing wrong with eating that. You are getting some fiber and some probiotic type nutrition there. The next thing is going to be a little bit of fruits. So it doesn't have to be a whole lot, but they do bring antioxidants. So quantities of these two things, I like to get most people around that 200-pound mark eating close to 400 grams of cooked vegetables per day. And a little bit less than that from the fruits. So my go-to is just frozen berries. Frozen berries are excellent. They start to become more of a treat, especially if you're kind of getting used to this. Giving yourself a little bit of something sweet, but that is actually healthy is always a positive. Save it for, whenever you're snacky, you make yourself some kind of a frozen fruit dessert, with some whey protein, things of that nature.
Whey protein, casein, or I like Greek yogurt.
Yep, that's my favorite. I just go Greek yogurt, put some frozen fruit in there, let it melt by itself, at room temperature, and then I eat it as I wind down for the night. That's always a really good go-to. So you're getting antioxidants, you're getting micronutrients of minerals and vitamins, and then on the protein side, I still base my total protein amount on lean body mass or body weight. So roughly close to
lean body mass. Sometimes
yeah.
if you're trying to improve, you're probably going to adjust
Yeah.
it slightly. Hey, I want to be 210 pounds instead of 200. So maybe you will raise that protein now before you even get there.
Yeah, and that's crucial to understand as far as like protein. If you are already under eating proteins dramatically, right? Just trying to train yourself to get in enough is going to be a task, right? So I try to aim for 1.5 grams per pound of body weight when they're fully on board and they're getting enough protein and everything. So that's quite a bit, right? If you weigh 200 pounds, you're going to try to be getting almost 300 grams of protein.
Especially if
But
you've
that's
never done it as well.
right. So, but I don't try to start there. That's like the end goal. At the end goal, that's where we want to go, especially if you are wanting to get more muscular. If you're not, then I dial it back to just under 1 gram per pound. And then if you're just starting out, I try to hit 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. That's like, hey, this is the minimum. If you're in
That's
this,
absolutely like the lowest you should be going.
yeah, and most people you'll find are actually even lower than that if they're not tracking anything and you have them track for a day or two and you're like, oh, wow, you're severely under eating your protein. So then it becomes, for those people, the biggest hurdle is like, well, what can I eat that gets me the most bang for my buck, right? Red meat trumps a lot, It brings a lot of B vitamins. It brings iron, zinc, sometimes even copper, things of that nature. So red meat is probably number two. I would say the number one is actually going to be fatty fish like sardines, salmon, mackerel. The reason is because they start to bring things like calcium, copper. Any shellfish is going to bring a lot of copper, iodine, and I'm trying to think. Oh, zinc is another one that like those are really high in those, which are hard to get in other places. In fact, not only from the mineral side, but the omega-3 side for heart health and all that. So the fatty fish is number one, but it's the one that's the hardest to get people to eat regularly. People just, I mean, it's just what it is, right? It's either too expensive or they don't like it, but I can't stress that enough. The closer you can get to having 3 to 4 meals a week of some kind of fatty fish, you're going to cover a lot of those bases. It's going to bring a lot of those very crucial minerals and very crucial omega-3s. And then secondly is where I go with red meat. And the red meat is literally, hey, let's just try to get one meal a day of 4 to 6 ounces of red meat. And then the rest of the time, if you prefer chicken, that's great. we'll eat some chicken. But if we can vary your protein source just enough that you're getting a little bit more of these other things like phosphorus, iodine, copper, selenium, zinc, um, even sulfur. Sulfur is very important for your immune system. It's part of the process. It's part of one of the molecules that gets donated in a lot of the chemical processes that go on in your body. So that's where I try to start. Like when somebody's really under eating their protein, I'm like, okay, what are you eating for protein? Most of the time it's like, I'm eating some yogurt or some milk and some protein shake or
Yeah.
a bar, right? And I'm like, okay, let's step it back a little bit. Let's get rid of the protein shake and the bar and substitute those two things specifically with a red meat source and a chicken source. Even that's already better than, because people don't understand, like a bar, a whey protein shake, milk, yogurt, cottage cheese, those are all, in my opinion, one source because they're all dairy. All of them are dairy. I mean, unless you go get a vegan protein bar or a vegan protein shake. The rest of, if they're not, then you're all dairy. At that point, you're kind of skewing your nutrition to one part of what you need, not necessarily from amino acids. And that's why I say, that's why this whole thing is started. Is it's not just about the grams of protein and the amino acid profile in your protein source. It's about everything else that comes with it and how it gets utilized by your body.
And it doesn't come from like nowhere. It comes from experience that we've seen people doing all the time. And there was a video about what's his name, James Crocknell, and he was doing this marathon, this Sables in desert, 200 kilometers, I believe. And they put him on the same amount of calories that he was eating on shakes, and he just became so weak. His weight started to drop and everything, just because he was not getting what nutrients he actually needed. Which, let's be honest, nutritional science is quite good, but we still don't know so many things that there is literally no point of pushing back against. We know what works, which is real food, calming yourself the hell down. What we talked about first couple of videos about getting your physiology right for your body to actually utilize that food. And only then, when everything is topped up and you really need that extra step, that's when you start tapping into like protein bars, protein shakes, maybe when you travel in, easy to grab with you, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, those things, I view them as a convenience, not as a staple, right? That does, like, just like you said, that doesn't mean I don't eat protein bars or protein shakes. It's just not something that I include into my meal plan every day, especially when I'm at home,
And
right?
I think where misconception comes in as well is that a lot of people think if you're building muscle, you need to eat hell of a lot of meals,
Right.
when more often than not, 4 is pretty much optimal. Like, I don't even know if I have eaten more than 4 meals a day for God knows how long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
if
usually
I was
stick
to
to
try to
4.
max out my like performance and physical like aesthetical look, I probably would up it to 6, 7, 8. I have had 11 before, 13, you know. But for casual day-to-day life to look great and feel amazing, there's really no need.
No, there isn't. That's another misconception. It really comes down because, again, just like you mentioned earlier, if you're hitting all these micronutrients and you're more active and you're feeling much better as far as like energy wise, and you're just kind of go go go, you actually end up exactly getting hungry 4 times that day. Like that's the only time where you're like, oh, I'm actually really hungry. And when you're really hungry, your meals tend to be a little bit bigger, and that's okay. Um, you spread them out, you make them a little bigger. Now you have 4 meals. There is no such thing as you must eat every 90 minutes or you must eat every 2 hours or whatever. That's not really a thing. That's, once you've ate more than 3 times that day, it's only because of convenience. And I do find that 4 meals is pretty convenient for very active people that are doing, because most of the time they're up really early, right? They're getting their shit done early, so they might as well eat while they're early. And then when everybody else is kind of waking up and having their first meal of the day, you have your second meal of the day, and then you're go, go, go for the next 4 hours. Mid afternoon, you have your next meal, go until the evening, you have your fourth meal. And that's really it. It makes scheduling better as far as like ease of scheduling things and having to set off some time to, if you have to cook or if you have to go get some food. But yeah, 4 meals is kind of the sweet spot that I find for most people.
Yeah. So when
Um,
you cover all your micronutrients, you cover all your proteins. Now you tap into the hated carbs. Uh, but I believe the first probably we would cover fat intake.
okay.
How important it actually is, how much you should be having, not having, and can you just survive on protein and fat?
Yeah, yeah. So the fact, well, just to answer that, backwards, can you just survive off of protein and fat? Yeah, if you're meeting your micronutrients, no reason you can't, as long as you've set up your biology to do so. Some people are not going to be able to utilize, especially back to, I think, the second conversation we had, maybe even the first, aerobic capacity, because oxygen is the key driver to fatty acid oxidation. That's the key word in there. You have to oxidize the fat in order to get the energy from it. If you are poor aerobically, you're blunting that. So again, goes back to why you should watch these in order. If you are going keto because you want to kickstart something, but you have poor aerobic capacity, guess what? You're going to feel really shitty on keto. Oh, very, very shitty, to the point where you're like, I just don't have any energy in me. Why is this not working? Well, your aerobic capacity is so low, you are not actually oxidizing as much fat as you should be. And that goes back to directly setting up your biology to do so. Say, like in fact, I have pretty much keto meals in the morning and in the evening. Especially when I'm really trying to dial in my recovery and performance, as far as like um, my performance of my body taking care of itself, right? No need to create extra inflammation when I don't want to or anything like that. So I'll have a keto meal. I don't feel any problem with it. It's not like, oh, I need carbs to for this next 2 hours. I'm like, no, nothing really happens. I actually don't even feel a difference in energy levels.
Yeah,
Um, Especially even in the morning when I have like a zero carb meal, first two meals of the day, if I have them zero carb, I feel totally fine. It's not even a problem. It's not like I have brain fog, but people that are poor aerobically will notice right away within 2 days.
yeah,
Even sometimes within one day, they're like, man, this is shitty. I don't really feel very good. I don't really have energy and I can't think straight and things of that nature. And it goes back to their biology's not doing what it should be doing. And then, so that kind of answers number one. Fats in general, right? So that's where the fatty fish comes in. If you're getting a lot of fat from your fatty fish, you're hitting a lot of what we're actually wanting from fats, which is good non-saturated fats, ideally omega-3s, to lower inflammation. Most people are getting more than enough omega-6s from nut butters and things of that nature, and canola oils and things of that. You don't need more of them, although I will say, according to studies and things of that nature, those are still better than saturated fat when it comes to cholesterol management.
mhm,
But there is new research out there. In fact, there's a study that's going to be either concluded this year or concluded next year, studying omega-3s, specifically in cardiovascular risk outcomes. So they're actually finding that having an omega-3 index of 7 or higher is way more correlated than your HDL and LDL on cardiac risk. And
yeah,
that's because omega-3 fatty acids actually form parts of your cells, like the actual membrane and stuff. Think of it almost not really like a lubricant, but pliability, making cells pliable, and things of that nature. And, you know, me and you kind of know this about, like, hey, receptors on the cell side of the outside of the membrane and stuff like that, for insulin and for everything else, those are part of the membrane. And just as an example, insulin doesn't come in and actually physically connect to the cell. It's actually magnetic. And the receptor, if it can tilt and move and do all kinds of things because the cell membrane is pliable, guess what? You have better receptivity. That means your cells are working better.
and
So
it also
omega
comes in with being well hydrated as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's both of those. It's not just what the cell is made of, but is it properly hydrated so that it can do all its stuff, right? So hydration high, omega-3 fatty acids are crucial for building a very pliable, malleable cell membrane. So that's why I put fatty fish so high on the list, because they contribute directly on what we're trying to get from some of our voluntary fats that we're trying to take in. And then the minimum amount, I would say, is somewhere around the 60 to 70 grams of fat per day for someone around 200 pounds. If you're smaller than that, the fats can go down into the 50 range. Those numbers are small. They're small for a reason. You don't really need that many of them to accomplish those things, especially if you're prioritizing healthy fats, like I mentioned with the fatty fish, healthy fats from plant sources like avocado oil, olive oil, things of that nature. And then you're getting your saturated fats just from your protein sources, and that's okay. Saturated fat from eggs and red meats, when combined with these others, are not going to be devastating. In fact, they're probably going to be helpful to each other. And that's really it on the fats. You don't really need that many. So if you were to classify anybody under 200 pounds, you're looking anywhere from 50 to 70 grams of fat. Anywhere in the middle there, you're going to be pretty ideal.
And we could talk about, like, when people go, yeah, but if I eat fat, I burn more fat. Like, yes, there's nothing else to burn.
Yeah. I mean, it honestly
You need
just
to
comes
burn
down.
something for energy.
Yeah. I mean, it really just comes down to, okay, how do you feel and what are you trying to perform, right? If you're not actively going to the gym or things of that nature, and you're just, an office person, then you need a lot of carbohydrates? Probably not, right?
Yep.
So it comes back down to, what's your goal? Where are you working towards, right? And are you training towards that, like physically training, which, in my opinion, you should be. But if your training is basically, hey, a full body weight circuit and, a 2 or 3 mile walk in the mornings, well, then, yeah, you can probably get away with a lot less carbohydrates and you'll bring your fat up a little bit, but you would prioritize it from good, healthy fats for sure.
When you cover all that, then how important are carbs for health, performance, all those kind of things now?
So from a health perspective, I mentioned sweet potatoes, I mentioned carrots. Those are high in carbohydrates. I mean, they're not low carb foods, but they do bring micronutrients that are very essential. So some of these carbohydrate sources are going to cover both bases, right? But let's just kind of stick to, like, what people would consider like high carb sources, like rice, potatoes, bread, things of that
Sometimes
nature.
they consider cake high carb source when it's actually 60% fat. It's like,
Yeah,
cake is not high carb source, and so is not chocolate or donut. They're all
right.
fat.
Yeah. So in that context, yes, those are extremely valuable for performance. As far as your physical performance, no doubt. I mean, you're not going to, I don't care who you are. If you're trying to perform in a weight room or in some kind of an explosive event, like, a little bit of sprinting or something of that nature, you're going to struggle to perform well without carbohydrates. It's just that simple. Does that mean you need a ton of them? It depends on your training at that point, and then what you're going to do the rest
Your
of the time.
training,
Right?
your size,
Yes.
experience, your baseline
Yeah.
physiology.
Yeah. But at the same part, you can take, for example, a 120-pound woman and a 120-pound woman, and they're both doing two different things. One's trying to gain muscle and get a little bit more body composition change. The other one's just trying to stay fit and healthy, and not really changing her lifestyle other than including the basic stuff that we covered at the beginning. Well, their carbohydrate intake are going to be dramatically different, even though their calories might be very similar. The carbohydrate intake will be different for sure.
Yeah, and I think that wraps up the basics of all this kind of stuff. Next time we could maybe dwell into deeper of understanding why specific micronutrients are needed. You mentioned copper, zinc, magnesium, all those kind of things, just to kind of lay out, hey, this is why you're doing it. It's not that, oh, you just need variety, but just to explain, this is why that variety matters.
Yeah, we can dive into some of the crucial vitamins and minerals, and what they're doing in your body, right? Why do you
Yeah.
need them, etc.
Cool, Dave. Like, thanks for your time again, and I'll catch up with you next week.
Awesome.